There seems to be an understanding among political parties that coalitions cannot continue in their current form with no confidence motions every other day. This disrupts the delivery of services to many areas as councils then can't function. Well, the DA says its bills aimed at limiting motions of no confidence in mayors to create more stable coalitions are ready to be tabled in Parliament. Over the weekend, the ANC also told us of their plans to deal with dysfunctional coalitions. But DA National Spokersperson Werner Horn joins us now to take this discussion forward, particularly on coalitions. And Werner, thank you so much for your time and good morning to you. It seems there is some fears that exactly what you are trying to achieve continues to happen in metros such as Johannesburg, as we've seen now with different motions every other day. Let's talk about the concerns that other political parties have when it comes to the Moonshot Pact, particularly if we use these metros as a bit of a litmus test.
Yeah, look, I mean, the Moonshot Pact, as announced by our federal leader, is, of course, a process, an ongoing process to set up this pact. The announcement itself is process-driven. So the fact that other parties engage publicly, privately, is, of course, was to be expected, and it is to be welcomed.
And with that being said, I mean, have other parties raised, similar concerns to you, especially those that you have approached to join in the Moonshot Pact? I mean, what are some of the concerns that you are currently addressing, and how do you alleviate some of those concerns as the DA?
So, look, the concerns around the instabilities brought about by the current way in which coalitions operate, specifically in highly fragmented councils, I think is shared by ordinary South Africans, but by now I believe it is shared by at least those political parties who have at heart the best interest of residents and quality service delivery. It is to be expected that those political parties who, of course, operate on a model that power at any cost is what is to be achieved, might frown upon our private members' bills, which aims to bring about more stable coalition governments and a more stable coalition framework. But ultimately, it's quite clear that it's also those parties who we do believe should not be part of the Moonshot Pact, who might not be interested in supporting these private members' bills.
I mean, when we talk of the Moonshot Pact, Werner, we're looking more ahead to the 2024 general elections. But if we look at what's happening right now, are motions of no confidence inevitable when it comes to coalitions? Is it a matter of something that can be avoided, or is it bound to happen? Because I think with residents looking from the outside into what's happening, obviously paying the bigger price because then there's no service delivery, there's instability within the metros. What should be their expectations? Are motions inevitable?
Look, motions is firstly, of course, an accountability measure, part and parcel of democracy, and specifically also constitutional democracy. But in our specific circumstances, it has been abused in some councils like Johannesburg and up to fairly recently Ekurhuleni and Tshwane specifically. One had the sense that some political parties thought they played musical chairs. So these bills, of course, then now aim to introduce a framework in which once a mayor or a speaker for that matter, and on a provincial and national level, a premier and a president have survived one motion of no confidence in a 12-month cycle, there has to be extraordinary, exceptional circumstances for a second one to be accepted by the speaker and to be put before the legislature. And in that sense, we've taken our cue from the independent panel regime that Parliament has introduced in respect of other matters, like, for example, impeachment proceedings. And in those circumstances, an independent panel will first have to certify that there was a breach of the Constitution or the law, misconduct, or an inability on the part of that office bearer to still perform their functions and duties. So we believe that such a framework will ultimately bring about that balance between ensuring that accountability could be exercised whilst giving an incumbent who is part of a coalition at least a fair chance to settle into office and to try and deliver services through a budget. Ironically, in many circumstances currently, specifically in municipalities, budgets are approved whereafter office bearers are removed from office, and then the new coalition in any event sit with a budget which they would not have tabled or adopted.
Yeah, and it's supposed to also bring the sustainability once again to the residents, because that has been the bone of contention for the longest time, the sustainability of the metros. And I suppose, Werner, with that being said, those bills ready to be tabled to Parliament?
Well, the two I've just talked now has now progressed to the phase where they will be, as a first reading debated in Parliament, and then in the case of private members' bills, they refer to the committee processes of Parliament. So they've proceeded up to that point. The third bill, which is part of the current suite of private members' bills introduced by the DA, is the one which aims to bring in some sort of a threshold on local government level, and which aims to extend the period in which after every election the first meeting of council must happen from 14 days to 13 days, to also just bring about a bit of breathing space, specifically in highly fragmented councils, so that there's a proper time to negotiate, hopefully, coalition deals which will survive.
All right, we'll leave it there. Werner Horn, thank you so much for speaking to us about this this morning. Coalitions, of course, being at the top of everyone's mind, especially when we're heading over to the 2024 general elections, getting sort of a sense of what different political parties have to say. And that's the DA's national spokesperson, Werner Horn, speaking to us this morning about this.